Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Catholic ReCon Testimonies from Reverts and Converts. I'm your host, Eddie Trask. This week's guest is Abby Johnson. Abby, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, my pleasure. So, everyone, I want to let you know about Abby. Some of you already know about Abby, some of you do not. She worked for Planned Parenthood for 8 years, working her way up through the ranks to become the clinic director in Bryan, Texas. She was Planned Parenthood's Employee of the Year in 2008, but she walked away from her job after witnessing the abortion of a 13-week-old fetus during an ultrasound guided abortion. She left Planned Parenthood and instantly became a national news headline for her defection, which led to a pro life speaking career. In 2012, she founded And Then There Were None, the only ministry in the nation that helps abortion workers leave their jobs and find new ones out of the industry. To date, she has helped over 700 abortion workers quit. And we're going to get into other parts of the biography. But Abby, I want to start with your faith journey.
So I grew up in church. I grew up in a Southern Baptist church, a small church in South Louisiana. I just always remember being in church. So I don't ever remember a time when I wasn't in church or not going to church. My mom said that we didn't go like the first 3 years after I was born, but I don't ever remember that. So I remember being baptized in 1988. I was 8 years old. I was baptized with my dad. And I remember that. I remember that being a pretty significant part of my life. Um, and then just, always being in youth group and, kind of being a leader in the youth program at my church. And I remember going to college and, I remember wanting to keep that up, and I would go to, the big student ministry, church events, and things like that. But the longer I was there, the more I was, I guess, giving into the typical college party life scene. And, it's hard to go to church on Sunday when you're hungover. So that was, I think it's interesting when people say like they fell away from their faith because it's not a lot of falling, it's a lot of walking. And I really actively walked away from my faith. I mean, if you're a Christian and you're sinning, you're sinning. And, I knew what I was doing, but sin is fun. If it wasn't fun, we wouldn't want to do it. And it was fun, it was enticing. And so I walked away from my faith to do what was fun. And I think in the back of my mind, just always thought, well, God will be there when I need him. Kind of like a debit card, I guess. You can draw out, when you want to put something in, you can draw it out.
He'll always be there for you. So,
Mhm.
yep.
Yeah. And then I started working at Planned Parenthood and
At what age?
I was 20.
Okay.
No, well, let me think. Yeah, it was no, I just turned 21, actually. I just turned 21 when I started working there. And or no, I guess I was 20. I was 20 and I was about to turn 21. And just didn't I don't know, didn't think much about didn't know really anything about Planned Parenthood. And I knew what I was doing was wrong though, because I didn't go home and tell my parents what I was doing. So I knew they would not approve.
What role,
Um,
if you don't mind me asking, what was that as a 20-year-old? Did you just saw a job? Did they have a job fair at the college or
so
something?
they had a volunteer fair at my college and they were looking for, students, free labor, basically to come up there and volunteer. And um, I didn't know anything about the organization except that, the woman was telling me they wanted to help women and, who doesn't want to help women? I mean, everybody,
Yeah.
right? And so it was kind of like, oh, this is what you do. This is what smart women do. This is what women of the world do. This is, this is a feminist thing to do. And I don't even think I knew what a feminist was, but it sounded
It
cool. And
sounded cool.
yeah,
Healthcare,
and it
feminist.
feminine,
I'm in.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't want to be a bigot, right? So
Right.
yeah, I want to help women. So yeah, so I started volunteering and then got hired on quickly after. And that was kind of it. Once I was in, I was in, and really believed I was doing the right thing, really believed I was helping people. And I think when I got in initially, like I would have said, yes, I am pro-choice. Like I really did think, because I was so naive and so ignorant, I really did think abortion was probably not the best choice for the majority of women walking in. Like I would have steered them toward parenting your child while getting, necessary helps from the government or your local community, or steering them toward adoption, even though I knew nothing about adoption at the time. I would have thought that that was the better two options in having an abortion. But 8 years later, by the time I walked out, I was definitely pro-abortion. In my mind, it was like, if a woman walks in here, if she even has a doubt, just even a twinge in her mind that I don't want to have this baby, then it's better that she not. That was kind of it very much evolved over time. A lot of times a little sin will evolve into a really big sin, you
Yes.
know? And that's what evil does. Like a little bit of evil can sprout into really gargantuan size
And I want
evils,
I want to come back to that later once you become Catholic because of the importance of confessing venial sins so that they do
right?
not grow quickly
Mhm.
into mortal sins. But anyway,
Yeah. So, um, yeah. And while I was working at Planned Parenthood, because I was raised in church, I was like, well, I need to go to church because that was like a habit, right? Like, um, not because I really wanted to have a relationship with God, but just because I wanted to play like I had a relationship with God. So that like appearance, that counterfeit appearance of being in a relationship with God was important to me. So, and it was important actually in my work at the abortion industry because I could tell women, I mean, the majority of women who come in to get abortions are religious women. So I could tell women, no, I'm a Christian. I go to church every Sunday and I'm working here,
yeah.
right?
So
Like
they feel pretty good about hearing that. Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, no, I'm running this clinic and I go to church every Sunday. Like getting an abortion is fine. So I had to use it, I had to use it to my advantage. So we started going to an Episcopal church, and I'd never worshiped with the liturgy before, I had been like a praise and worship
Yeah.
gal. So I'd never worshiped in the liturgical way before. So I really grew to love that, and the Episcopal church, it's like Catholic, but without morals. So it's like a, same similar liturgy, just you can do and think whatever you want.
But
So
how'd you find the Episcopal Church coming from a Southern Baptist background? Was that something that a few other coworkers or people in the
mhm.
area started attending, or how'd that
Yeah,
happen?
so the Episcopal Church nationally, the Episcopal Church is a large donor to abortion. So they are a large donor to the Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice. And I knew that the, you know, at Planned Parenthood, we knew the Episcopal priests in the area and had done different, work with them in the area. So I kind of knew the Episcopal community in the area because of that. A ton of our donors went to the local Episcopal churches. And so, when I decided, well, we need to start going to church, I was like, oh, well, the Episcopal church will be a safe place for me to go because they're very supportive of the work that I do here at Planned Parenthood.
Got it. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So you're going to church. You have fallen away or walked away further from the church in a sense as you're attending church. You're playing dress up, so to speak.
Yeah.
I'm saying that because I've done the same thing very much.
Mm.
Um, how did you feel like you were getting closer in any way to God while also being further from him? I don't know if that makes sense, but
Mm.
how did you, that period of time, how'd that feel to be in that industry where you know something is horribly wrong and yet trying to maintain that relationship?
Yeah, I didn't really. I mean, for years, like I was good at just kind of like playing the part and feeling like, well, this is the Christian thing to do. Like I was really good at like justifying my work in the abortion industry with my faith. Because I was surrounded by that all the time. I mean, we had people come in all the time, like the clergy for choice would come in and give talks about, how the only moral thing for women and humanity is to be pro-choice. Um, and so it was really like embedded in my mind, And my boss would make sure that if there was going to be an event like that, that I was there. She wanted me to hear that. And so I really did, I mean, I really did believe it. And I remember some of my Christian friends saying to me something about abortion. And I was like, well, I think, the most sinful thing is to, have a child that's unwanted and to not be able to provide for, a child that you have or whatever. And I remember after I left, I heard Margaret Sanger give an interview and she said something so similar to what I used to say. And I'd never heard that interview before until after I left the clinic. And I was like,
Oh
oh
my
my gosh, it's
gosh.
so disgusting. I mean, it's just encouraging and giving really excuses for eugenics, really.
Yes. Yes. And you say for the common good, or you don't
Yeah.
need it. It would be sinful to not kill in
Kill.
this moment.
Yeah.
Whoa. Talk about the enemy
Yeah.
flipping things completely.
Yeah. 100%. So it's like gross now just to think about all the stuff I said. But in 2007, I became the director of the clinic. And that was the same year that we had this huge um, marketing branding change at Planned Parenthood. And we had this big marketing company come in and it was like it was Planned Parent, not just Planned Parenthood where I lived, but it was like Planned Parenthood National. And they PPFA had this big branding change. And so they came into our office and they told us, you're going to have to make all these changes. And one of the changes was that we were no longer going to be answering questions directly.
Mm.
Um, we were no longer going to be like giving answers directly if women ask questions. So they had given us a standard response that we were to answer every question with. And they were training us how to pivot back. No matter what the question was, we were to pivot back to this one particular answer. And the answer was women choose abortion because they care about themselves, their current family, and their future family. And I just remember like being in that meeting and thinking, that's crazy. Like if a woman asks me, does my baby have a heartbeat? Or if my baby asks me, does my baby feel pain or something? If I give her this like, half baked answer, like she's not going to just accept that. And so, but I'm supposed to trust them. Like they're the marketing people, they're the experts. So we went, we had clinic, we had an abortion provider there one day and we were doing abortions and we had this woman there and she was a religious woman and she was like crying and, saying, I don't know if God will forgive me and, all this stuff. And I remember just thinking to myself, okay, this is the time I can use this and see if it really works, right? So I said it. I was like, well, Women choose abortions because they care about themselves, their current family, and their future family. And she just stopped crying and she looked at me and she said, yes. She said, that's exactly why I'm doing this. She said, I'm having an abortion because I care about my baby. And I was like, oh, wow. And I just thought, we have done something huge. Like, we have turned abortion into an act of compassion. And it hasn't stopped since then. Now, that is the lie that Planned Parenthood has orchestrated and convinced the whole world of, that to kill is an act of compassion, that abortion is essentially like mercy killing. And so is euthanasia. And,
And on it goes,
and
right?
on and on, right? It's like this slippery slope. But I remember the day. I remember what I was wearing that day. I remember that day so well. And at the time I thought, well, this is great. Like, we're never going to have a woman turn away, because I was thinking about my abortion quota, that I had to fulfill. So I wasn't,
I didn't realize there was a quota.
yeah,
I mean, I should have known that, but
yeah. So I
you have
was
your monthly
thinking,
reports that you have to,
yeah, we had
yeah,
like a monthly quota we had to meet, or else I had to start firing people.
yeah.
So, I'm thinking this is awesome, right? But now that I look back, I'm just like, oh my gosh, that was the moment that it switched. In 2007, it was a huge year because it was the year when we did the rebranding. It was when we got rid of all the hot pink, and everything at Planned Parenthood turned blue, and everything feminine went away. And I didn't really understand what was happening right then. But the following year was the first year that we rolled out our transitioning hormone protocol. So in 2008 was the first year that we were allowed to transition, or we were allowed to give out male to female, female to male cross-sex hormone therapy. And so it's like they've always been a few steps ahead, you know? It's like they've always been able to just kind of look at the landscape and say we can kind of see what's coming up, over the horizon, and we're going to get ahead of it. And now that's a huge business to them, all this cross-sex hormone therapy, because you can charge a woman $500 for a surgical abortion. So what? If you can get someone hooked on cross-sex hormone therapy and get them to possibly mutilate themselves, you have a
Thousands.
patient that's worth about 80 to $100,000, and they're hooked on that for life. So what's $500 if you can get a client for life, and you can get anywhere for 80 to $100,000? Like, abortion seems like small beans, right? But it's like they could see it. Like, they could see it coming. And so people think all this stuff with Planned Parenthood and transgenderism and all that is new, but it's not. They've been doing it since 2008. So I think, to your question, like, I think there were things that were happening in that last year. I was told to double my abortion quota. We were building the largest abortion facility in the Western Hemisphere. My affiliate was, and I was going to be, asked to work in that building. We were going to be aborting babies through 6 months of pregnancy, which was troubling to me, because I always thought abortion at the point of viability, anything at viability and beyond, like, that was wrong. And so we were now there. Um, there were a lot of things, just the way that it felt like things were changing, but I kind of look back now and realize it wasn't that things were changing. It was just that at the end, I got so high up on the abortion ladder, I was able to get a better view of what we had been doing all along. And that was just selling abortion. We were like the people at the mall kiosk that are always chasing you down to like put lotion on your hand or something. That was us, but we were not selling lotion. We were selling death. And we were doing it through, forms of contraception, getting women hooked on forms of contraception that we knew ultimately would fail them, just so that we could get them an abortion later on. And I mean, so many things that we were doing. We were going into minority neighborhoods intentionally, into high risk, um, low SES, low income neighborhoods to encourage them to come to us to have abortions.
Eugenics. My
It's
goodness.
eugenics. Yeah. Like we were doing it, we were actively participating in it. And, we weren't actually helping women. We discontinued our prenatal program. They said that pregnant women were too cumbersome to deal with. And so they discontinued the prenatal program. They didn't want to deal with pregnant women. And, so many things that have been changing. And I think God was doing some things that last year in order to prepare my heart to see what I saw on the ultrasound guided abortion and then prompt me to leave, to kind of like soften my heart so that I would leave when I saw what I saw. When I did, I mean, it
You couldn't
was
unsee
like
it, right?
I couldn't unsee it. And then when I did, I knew I had to leave. And that was really when that was honestly when things got really hard, was when I left.
Right before we get into when you left, how crazy, maybe this was just in hindsight, but to call yourselves Planned Parenthood and then you recognize that they're not helping pregnant women. It's everything before pregnancy, sorry, it's during pregnancy, but in other words, if there's a viable birth and you know that the patient wants to carry this baby to term, and that's not even a big part of the business, that's just so upside down.
Wicked.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Sorry. Yeah. So it got difficult once you saw that ultrasound. Did you
Yeah.
decide in that moment, that evening or that week, that's it, I got to get out? Or how did that transpire?
Yeah, it actually took me about a week. So it wasn't immediate. I wasn't like, oh my gosh, I just saw this and now I'm throwing my stuff out and I'm running out the door. It wasn't like that. Um, that was kind of how the movie portrayed it, but it actually took me about a week because like this is really stupid, but when I that okay, so it happened on a Saturday and then Sunday I went to church. And the gospel that Sunday that was read in this church was in the Gospel of Matthew, where it talks about like if your hand causes you to sin, better to cut it off, that whole
Hmm.
passage. So that day, on that Saturday, my job had been to hold the ultrasound probe in place. And so I think during that time, like I had been really like holding it really tightly. And so my hand was kind of sore. And so when I was sitting in church and that verse was being read, I was like, oh my gosh, like, okay, God, like I hear you. I don't want to have to cut off my hand. And so when I walked out of church, I just felt like, okay, like something's gonna have to change, right? Like I feel like the Lord is speaking to me, like something's gonna have to change. So that Monday, I was like, I'm gonna change Planned Parenthood. So I went into work on Monday thinking I'm going to fix them. And I was like, I'm going to change things. Like, I'm going to get them to, you know, stay away from abortion. Like, I'm high enough now that I can change the direction of the organization. And within like 48 hours, I realized that there's no changing this. Like it's in every part of what we do at Planned Parenthood. Like abortion is at the core of it. And so I realized, okay, I can't do that. And so then I knew I had to leave, but I thought I probably need to have a job before I leave. And I did not have a job. My husband was a teacher, so like he didn't make any money. So I was a little nervous to leave my job, but one day I was standing in my office and because I'd already said I'm not going to participate in abortion. So, my hands are clean. Like I'm not going to do it anymore, even though I still work here. And I was looking out the window and there was a woman getting into her car and she was holding a little brown paper bag. And I knew in that bag were the chemical abortion pills. And I just thought, like, I'm still doing it. Even if I'm not in the room doing it, my paycheck is coming from blood money, from, abortion money. Like it's all tied together. And so that was when I decided I have to leave. And so that was when I went to the pro-life group and asked them if they could help me find a different job. And they said yes. And then that was kind of that.
Do
And
you
then Planned
have
Parenthood sued me.
Okay, I was gonna say, how was the exit interview for this process? Did you just what reasons did you cite? Obviously, if you're getting sued, there was something that went awry there.
Yeah. So Sean Carney with 40 Days for Life, he was one of the people I talked to about it. And he was like, don't say anything, just make it sound like you're upset with the organization. And so I wrote a Facebook post making it, seem like I was just mad at Planned Parenthood. I I was like, okay, that's how I'm gonna make it sound. But in my resignation form, I did say something about how I just couldn't morally stand to be there anymore. And I think that triggered them to think, oh, something, so because I mean, they knew something had happened because I did not give them any notice. I just walked out
Yeah.
that day. And so they knew something had happened. And so I think what happened, I'll never know. I don't know what really happened, but I think what happened is they started asking the employees if they knew anything. And I had told my two best friends at the clinic what I was doing. And so I think they told
Hmm.
that I was going to the Coalition for Life. And so they got a temporary gag order against me. But when they did, they sent a press release to the Associated Press, letting the AP know that they were so sad that they were having to sue their former director. But that I had, all of this information that they didn't want disclosed to the public. To which then the AP said, oh, really? What information does she actually have? We would like to know. And that is what made it a big news story. They really did it to themselves. I mean, without Planned Parenthood, without their terrible media department, I probably wouldn't have the platform that I do
That's
today because,
It seems to happen a lot in different instances where, hey, if they would just not respond, probably work out a lot better.
yeah, because honestly, I was so embarrassed. I didn't ever want to talk about what I had done. Like I just wanted to like slink off, into the corner of society
Mm.
and pretend like I had never worked there, never done what I had done. I never intended on going public or telling anyone what I had done there at the clinic, but they kind of forced it out. And so, you know,
Wow.
once they did, I felt compelled to talk. So
And then that obviously, like you said, gave you a platform where you, as it ties to your testimony, through that whole process, were you still engaged with that Episcopal church?
so Yeah. So I knew once I had had this transformation, I was pro-life now. Like I knew I could no longer go to the Episcopal Church, but like I knew I couldn't continue there, but we did go a few Sundays after I had left Planned Parenthood, and they were all very cold to me after I had left. And like I didn't even tell them why I had left. I had just said, I just don't want to be there anymore. I don't really like some of the ways that they're treating women, some of the things they're doing. And that was enough for really pretty much the whole congregation to go against me because I wasn't there anymore. And so then interviews started coming out on TV. And once that happened, we got called in by the priest who told us that we were no longer welcome in the Episcopal Church. And so, which was fine. I mean, we knew that was going to happen, but we kind of wanted to fire them. So, but they got to us first. So it was cool. And then we were trying to figure out where we wanted to worship, where we wanted to go to church. And um, we wanted to continue going to a church that was liturgical, but we also wanted to go to a church that was pro-life. We didn't have a ton of options. We didn't feel like we had a ton of options. I mean, there was a Lutheran Missouri Synod church in town, and it had like 25 people in attendance every Sunday. And we were like, we don't really feel like that's, passing the vibe check. So we didn't want to go there. And then we knew there was Anglican, we knew there was the Anglican church, but there was not an Anglican church where we lived. So that wasn't an option. And my all of my new pro-life friends were Catholic. So, but both my husband and I kind of grew up with some anti-Catholic tendencies. And so we were both like, oh no, like we would never become Catholic, gross. And but all of our new friends were like, come to mass, come to mass. So finally I just told my husband, I said, look, let's just go one Sunday. That way we can tell them we hated it and they'll leave us alone. So we went one Sunday and we actually didn't hate it. And we just felt a lot of peace there that was very unexpected. And so we told our friend, one of our friends, like he asked us, what do you think? And we were like, yeah, we didn't hate it. Like it's actually really peaceful. We kind of liked it. And then we were like suddenly sitting in RCIA, um, figuring out whether we wanted to become members of the church. And my husband really dove like headfirst into it. He was loving it. He read Theology of the Body and Humanae Vitae, and he was like, this is it for me. And I remember him saying, like, if they're right on this, then I believe they're right on everything else. And I remember looking at him and saying, I am not going to be one of those Catholic women with a bunch of kids. I remember looking him in the face and saying that.
Tell the audience how many kids you have while
We
you
have
say
eight. We
eight.
have eight
Okay.
kids. So he was like, it's fine, it's fine. Like, and he's like, it's not what I'm asking you to do. And I'm like, oh gosh. So we had gone to RCIA and it had been like it had been like a knockdown, drag out fight with me and the RCIA director, and he was the one that was teaching us. And we were just like arguing, like screaming at each other. And he was the perfect person to teach us because he was willing to go head to head with me. And we left. I was so mad. And Doug just looked at me and said, Abby, I'm doing this. Like, I'm joining the church with or without you. So either get on board or don't. But this is what I'm doing. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, he had never said anything like that to me before. He had never put his foot down like that with me. And I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, just like telling me what it was, and I was like, oh,
He was that sure of it. Did you have kids at the time?
we only had one at the time.
Okay. Okay.
And so I just was like, okay, like I guess I have to get serious. And so I read the Summa and I read the Catechism like front to back. And I read some like just other writings from the early church fathers. And the more I read, the more I realized this is truth. And all of the answers I had had growing up as like a little Baptist kid were answered. And the things that, pastors couldn't answer for me when I was growing up, I had found the answers. And I was like, okay, like this does feel right. And we entered the church Easter of 2012. I was huge pregnant with our second child, which was funny because we had to convalidate our marriage, and our priest said, "Are you open to life?" We were like, "Yeah, kind of." Um, so it was great. It's been such a journey. I mean, I had to relent to allow my husband to be the spiritual head of our home. Um, I had to learn what that looked like. We had to learn how to have a sacramental marriage because we didn't know what that looked like. And a marriage where things are in proper order because our marriage had been so disordered for so long. And um but a lot of that took, me getting my heart in order and allowing him to to do what God had really ordained him to do as the head of our family. And, once I did, and once I really surrendered, and once Doug took his position, um, there was so much healing in our marriage. And I mean, Doug and I both tell people all the time, I don't know if our marriage would have lasted if it hadn't have been for the Catholic Church. And her knowledge on the sacrament of marriage. It's not just vows, it's not just a promise, it is a sacrament. And that really does change um, the way that you live life inside of your marriage.
Completely agreed. What about reconciliation for someone that
Yeah.
was raised Southern Baptist and, decades away, obviously away from the Catholic Church? What was that like?
So, um, yeah, my first reconciliation was hard, but it was also really beautiful. And I feel very, very blessed that I had an amazing confessor. My first confession. I don't ever think I've had a bad confession. I mean, I don't know. I feel like God just give me a lot of favor there because I have friends that are like, "Oh, that was a terrible confession" or something, and I've never had that. Um, but maybe it's because I don't go as often as I should. Maybe that's the problem. But I think,
Statistically, yeah,
yeah, statistically, I think maybe that's the problem. But I think it is hard. Like my kids, they've grown up Catholic. And so they go to a really amazing Catholic school. And so they go to confession at least once a month, like sometimes every week they go to confession. Like they're just there all the time. And so anytime like in youth group or at a camp, like anytime confession is available, like my kids run to the line to go. They're just
what a
like it's
blessing. Wow.
so normal for them. Like it's so, all the kids in our youth group at church, like anytime we do anything, the kids are like, is there going to be confession? Like, because they want to go, like they have a desire to go. I think for me, because that's just it feels so foreign, I'm still having to get used to it, even after, 12 years of being in the church. Like I'm still having to get used to the idea of like bearing my soul,
Sure. Yeah. It's
in verbal form,
yes.
like it's still like a foreign feeling.
Well, and even if you're going face to face on top of it, people will say that's a whole different thing. You have
Yeah.
to actively muster up courage each
Yeah.
time. And you have to
Yeah.
trust that God's going to give you the grace to be able to make a good confession, obviously.
Yeah.
Fantastic story. How, as your eyes are being opened and you're reading, or your husband, you were referencing your husband reading Theology of the Body, Humana Vitae, all these texts, you're reading the Catechism. How did you deal with the layers of your past at Planned Parenthood as you're recognizing, I guess, just how far away you had been from the truth?
So, I have to say, I think it would have been harder if I hadn't have had the saints. I think the saints really helped. Um, just knowing, I mean, so many of the saints that intercede for us have such crooked paths in their past. And so looking to them and their lives and just the glorious things that they did for Christ was really, um, and how God rewarded them for their faithfulness, even though they did have maybe a sordid past. Um, that was consolation to me. I think that, and just a reminder that God is good to forgive and that that is his character, that his character is to give us mercy when it's, even undeserved. And so that was really helpful to me. And I think honestly, I mean, people say it, I think it's kind of cliche among Catholics, but really staying in the sacraments. So, going to mass whenever I can and just constantly being reminded of Jesus. Just, just having him in my face and literally like in my body when whenever I can. That's, I think that was the greatest way to heal and overcome what I had done. I remember it was um it was one Mother's Day. I was I don't know, I was just really kind of struggling just, I mean, Mother's Day is a beautiful day for me. I have all these children and everything, and I don't remember how many kids I had at the time, maybe like 4 or 5. And I remember at church, I was just looking at the crucifix and just really feeling like just really thinking about my past and just really thinking about all the damage I had done and everything. And um, I just kind of was sitting on the steps in front of our altar and just kind of looking at the crucifix. And we have a statue of Our Lady off to the side, and I just I felt compelled to just kind of look at her, and I just felt in that moment like something in my heart just saying that there was nothing that I've suffered with that she hasn't already suffered through also. And I think, you know, the devotion to Mary that I have also has really helped. And I have felt that it's kind of strange, but like I've felt that devotion to Mary since I was a child. Um, my mom laughs because she says like I'm the least surprised person that you became Catholic because when I was a child, when I was like 5 years old, and I would come back from school, like from kindergarten, we got EWTN. I grew up in South Louisiana, and we got EWTN, and I would come home from school and turn the TV on, and Mother Angelica would be on, and I would turn her on, and I would go into the bathroom and get a towel and a clothespin, and I would pin it on my head to look like a habit. And I would sit in front of the TV and watch Mother Angelica with my little towel on around my head. And so I've always felt a really strong pull toward her. And I have a great mom. Like it's not like I'm, you know, have some sort of desire, longing for a mother or anything like that. But she's just always pulled me toward her. And even when I worked at Planned Parenthood, I had Catholic Marian art in my home. And there's just so many stories about Mary. And I think she just really worked to protect me my whole life. And so just being able to connect with her through suffering and um, difficult times has really been a blessing as well.
So well said. Thank you for that, Abby. Um, so want to pivot a little bit. Your work speaking against abortion, can you talk about the different things that you do actively to, again, combat all the things that you're aware of and the things that continue to progress, like you were saying, that visionaries in the worst way for this business? Can you talk about what you do to combat it?
Yeah, so in 2012, I started a ministry called And Then There Were None, and we reach into abortion clinics and attempt to remove their current staff and help to get them into life-saving forms of employment. But more importantly, we try to heal them from their past in the abortion industry and get them back into a saving relationship with Christ. I regret to tell people that the majority of people who have some sort of faith foundation um, are actually baptized Catholics. So if they were raised in the church, they were raised in the Catholic Church. And so our goal then is to get them back into the sacraments and to get them to the Eucharist. So we work hard to do that and have been successful. Um, we have helped 700 abortion clinic workers leave the industry and 8 full-time abortion doctors. We've helped them leave and find new employment. Those 700 workers have then turned around and have wanted to begin the process of shutting down their clinics that where they once worked. And so we have helped to shut down 48 abortion clinics um, that were representative of the workers that have left. And so we're really trying to create a stigma, around working in the abortion industry, that this is not normal work, that it's harmful. It's harmful to their psychological health, and that the men and women who work in these clinics, that they deserve better than the abortion industry. And so we're really, that's our goal, is to, stop the flow of abortion by draining the clinics of their workers. Um, and so we're doing that. And then in 2019, um, we I founded Pro Love Ministries, and that's an organization that seeks to try to fill gaps in the pro life movement. And one of the gaps that we saw was being able to provide case management services to women who are in need, primarily single mothers. So we have a lot of pregnancy centers that provide some material assistance to moms in need, but the overwhelming majority of them, like 98% of them, do not provide um, services for housing, transportation, electric bill payments, water bill payments, things like that. And that's actually what women need. Um, Over 70% of women have abortions stating that they need financial help, not that they need diapers in 9 months when their baby comes. They need help right then. So, about every month we prevent, on average about 100 evictions for pregnant moms. And that's, we feel like that's pretty significant, so that, women will not be out of their homes and homeless um, with, pregnancies. And so we do that. We also, you know, if a woman calls in to our hotline, which is called Loveline, if a woman calls into Loveline and says, I have an abortion scheduled, or I'm thinking about having an abortion, our question to her is, what will it take to get you to cancel that appointment. And whatever it is, if it's humanly possible for us, we'll do it. If we have to buy her a car, if we have to pay 6 months of rent to keep her house, like whatever it is, if we have to move her across the country to protect her from domestic violence, um, whatever it is, we'll do it because whatever the price tag is, it's worth it to save a life. And so we have a 24-hour hotline, and people can text or call. And the website's loveline.com. So people can use that. We have pro lifers that will be, it'll be a waitress waiting their table, or, a hotel clerk, or, anywhere, a housekeeper at a hotel or something, that will just start sharing about their current situation. And pro-lifers, Catholics, anyone can certainly let them know there's a resource for you, and it's at loveline.com, and we'd be happy to help.
So, so helpful. And that question you ask every woman is so simple yet so, so powerful. And it's the complete opposite of the past where you were, the clinic is basically saying if you say anything in the realm of I'm leaning towards an abortion, okay, yeah,
Yeah.
you should get that. It's amazing. It's completely reversing all of that. So, how
Yeah.
beautiful. So, Abby, you want to talk about this book that you have that's coming out? I don't know the date, but it's called What's in Mommy's Tummy, right?
Yeah.
You want to talk about that and why you decided to write a children's book?
Yeah. So I was on a plane, and I was on social media, and I saw that there was a book being published, it already has been published, describing what an abortion is to children. It was a children's book. And I was so infuriated. And I later found out that there are several books out there that attempt to describe abortion to children in a positive way. They're abortion positive. And it made me so infuriated as a mom of 8 children that people are trying to that parents are actively trying to justify sin to their children, because as a child, sin is very black and white. It's not until adulthood that we begin to accept sin, really. um and we do sin as children, but we don't accept it until we're older. And so, you can ask any child, is it okay to kill a baby in a mommy's tummy? And every single child will say, no, of course not. Right. But here are these adults trying to convince children that killing a baby in a mommy's tummy is perfectly acceptable. And that just infuriated me. And I thought, you know what? I can't just sit here on an airplane or sit here in my house and just say, I'm just going to be mad about it. I need to do something about it. And so, goodness knows, I have a million children's books, and um, know pretty much what they consist of, and what the story should look like in a children's book. And so, on that plane ride, I just started writing. And by the time we touched down, I had written a pretty rough draft of what I wanted it to look like. And I thought, you know what? I want to write at least 8 books. And I want to write one for each one of my children. And each character will be the name of one of my children. And so this one is for Luke, who is my third child, my second boy. And I don't know which one the next one will be for, but it's just a really fun book talking about life in the womb and this little boy trying to figure out what is going on with his mom's growing belly. And it's fun, and it's funny, and it's a lighthearted take on something that is very true. And it's giving truth to our kids that really do need to understand that life is growing at the moment of conception, and that we need to do everything we can to protect it.
I can only imagine how excited you got on that flight once you started writing. Just right, your heart must have been just
Yeah.
pumping with so much joy to figure out this is something that you've been, I don't know, God put it in you probably so many years ago, and then here you are finally putting it out there. Where can people learn more about you, the book, anything else?
So you can go to my website. It's abbyj.com, and you can pre-order the book pretty much anywhere. I Somebody showed me that they were actually pre-selling it at Target, which I could not believe. At Target was I was like, they haven't read it yet. If they would have read it, they would not have put it on their site. Um, but it's selling everywhere. So, you can buy it on Amazon or wherever you buy books. You can pre-order it. Pre-order sales really, really, really help the sale of the book and help us get to a higher ranking number. So, yeah, so I would encourage people to pre-order it now.
And when's it coming out?
It's coming out January 7th, I think, is the release date.
Okay. Okay. Great. Abby, anything else you want to add that we did not cover today?
No, I just appreciate you having me on. And yeah, if you want to know more about me, the ministries I run, my podcast, anything like that, abbyj.com.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much for your time and thank you for what
Thank
you
you.
are doing and what you've done. Really
Of
appreciate
course.
it.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Well, everyone, please share this episode and please subscribe, like, and comment. Until next time, take care and God bless you. Bye.